how's things for you, Marty? Like with all the press, promotion, revolving the book, are you keeping up with everything? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. First of all, it was 18 years plus when my wife was diagnosed. So that is a journey in and of itself, but she passed away on April 25th. And so since April 25th, the book has come out. And so much of my life has been then preparing for the launching of the book and doing the kinds of things that have to be done. So it's been very busy, and probably a blessing that I have had a chance to be as occupied as I have been, because I think this whole process of adjusting in life sometimes takes a period of time, and it's coming along. And I don't know if you ever heard of John Mccain.
I have, yes.
The senator from Arizona, and he had brain cancer, and he said, don't feel bad for me because I've had a great life and no one gets out of this alive. And I remember him saying that. And so with my wife's passing, emotionally it's tough, but intellectually, I know no one gets out of this alive. And her world was so small that she did not have hardly much of a life. And so we go on, and she's been in assisted living memory care, like in a nursing home now for like 8 years. And so I've had a chance to be alone and get adjusted to all of that to a certain degree. But, we've had such terrible killings in this country, and also homicides and shootings and so forth. And I have been so fortunate. My family has been fortunate. The COVID came, but it didn't leave a heavy, dark mark. And so there's so many, life can, the old saying, it can either be half empty or half full, the glass. And I have been so fortunate in that my glass has always been half full. And rejoice in that. That's for sure.
Did she pass peacefully?
Pardon?
Did she pass peacefully?
Yes. Yeah, that was a great blessing. This business of Alzheimer's, as I said, she was in assisted living for 8 years. And so I had a chance to know many of the people that were there, as well as their caregivers and family and friends and so forth. And it's a terrible disease. And even in life, it's terrible, but even also when a person is passing, because they may forget to swallow, and many sad things then physically with not being able to eat and so on. But by the grace of God, it was an unexpected passing. The doctor had examined her the week before, saying she's getting great care, she's healthy. And within 5 days, they called me and they said that she had passed away. And so, but what happens is like I said, 18 years. So you lose a little bit of your wife every day. Yeah. And I think you grieve a little bit every day. And because of that grieving and losing, you are sort of making an adjustment to be in a position to maybe more, for want of a better term, roll with the passing. And also, in a way, consider it to be an understanding that it was time. And as John McCain said, no one gets out of this alive. So, great.
Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of the Storybox podcast. Today, my friends, I'm delighted to welcome former Wisconsin Governor Martin J. Schreiber, or Marty as he goes by. He's an award-winning crusader for Alzheimer's, caregivers, and persons with dementia, which I think is quite admirable, especially because his wife, who recently passed away in April, she had Alzheimer's and dementia, and he looked after her for, I believe, 18 years of her life. Is that correct, Marty?
That's correct. It was 18 years since she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Yes.
which I think is honestly incredible. And you have this brand new book called Two Elaines, Learning, Coping and Surviving as an Alzheimer's Caregiver, which was recognized by caring.com as one of its best caregiving books of 2017. Marty, can I welcome you so much to the Storybox podcast today?
Well, thank you, Jay. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
It's great to have you here, my friend. We'll just chatting a moment ago about all things Wisconsin. I was learning about it, and you were also sharing some of the things about your wife. And I can't wait to dive further into your story, because you're also a former Wisconsin governor. You're 83 years old, I believe. Hope you don't mind me saying that live for everyone to hear. But you have a lot of history. You have a lot of stories and a lot of wisdom and advice that I want to try and unbox for my audience, if that's okay with you. Before we dive, though, into more of your backstory, my very first question for you is, what does success look like for you?
What does success look like for me? I think it's a comfort in your own mind that you tried and you did your best and you were able to help people. I think that would be success. And, when you get to be 83 years old and you see your friends and acquaintances pass away and so forth, and realize how much of the life was spent, getting from one promotion to the next, getting one pay increase to the next, getting, more assets and more financial advantages. In the end, it doesn't matter. And in the end, what does matter is, I guess I always say it's maybe not whether you win or lose, but it's who's cheering for you when you're coming down the home stretch. And to be able to have good people around, that's really the most important. And I think that's what I would classify as success.
What has made you realize that? Is it more life experience as you've grown in life?
Yes, but my parents never really felt that to be the richest or the most powerful was something that they aspired to. They always aspired to wanting to do the best job possible with what they had, always trying to make sure that they were fair with people and, if possible, to help them out. So it was sort of maybe ingrained in me from the beginning, just by observing what was going on in my own home as a youngster growing up.
You did mention, sorry, my dog is just barged.
That's okay.
You did mention that you've seen people come and go over the course of your life. How has that helped shape your understanding of life itself and the mortality of life?
Well, we had talked about the former United States Senator John McCain.
Yeah.
And he had developed brain cancer and was in the process of dying. There's nothing more they could do with him. And the story is told that he was with a friend, and the friend began bemoaning the fact that, here he was dying. And John McCain said, look, he said, I've had a great life. And he said, no one gets out of this alive. And it's the truth. And we've seen it since the beginning of humankind. So intellectually, we can handle the changing of the seasons, the fact that people pass on. We can handle that. But when it comes to emotionally, you cannot love someone and have them pass away without feeling, deep sadness and grieving, because we're human beings. And even they say that, animals that mate for life have this terrible longing and this terrible even loneliness. But so here we are as human beings, and my wife and I were married for 61 years, and it was a wonderful life. And now she's left me, of course. And one of the things, Jay, that I think is so important when we talk about this Alzheimer's thing is that we caregivers don't really understand the fact that we're grieving. In other words, we see our loved one die maybe a little bit every day, and we are trying to adjust to this new normal. We don't actually get to the point where we say, wait a minute, why? What are the reasons that I am feeling as depressed and sad as I am feeling? One of the reasons is that you have this, what I call unacknowledged grief. And what do we learn growing up? Well, one of the things that sometimes I learned too late, and that is to be able to understand and confront our emotions, and to be able to just really question why do I feel this way? And it's really with any kind of life situation, when you're nervous or upset, what is really at the bottom of it? And that ends up, the title of the book is My Two Elaines, learning, coping, and surviving as an Alzheimer's a caregiver. The point of the matter is learning, coping, and surviving as a human being. And I think many of the principles that were just sort of driven home as I'm caring for Elaine end up being true aspects of how we should be in all activities of our life.
How did you meet Elaine?
We were 14 years old, and we were in Latin class, and her last name was Staney. My last name was Schreiber. So S and T, we sat pretty close to one another, and it was basically love at first sight. So we dated, and then what we call going steady, and we got engaged, and we got married, and 4 children and 13 grandchildren, and now 7 great grandchildren. And so, you talk about a blessing in life to find a helpmate, a companion, a friend, a partner. I was so fortunate. And now she had to develop a lot of patience and a lot in order for us to survive this, but and forgiveness. She had to do a lot of forgiving. I would like to say I was perfect, but I was not, but she was always supportive. One of the things I remember is I ran for office, of course, on a number of occasions, and she would be the hardest working campaigner. But if I would lose an election, she would never let me feel defeated. And I think that was one of the most important aspects of our relationship, and what gave me strength, because I knew that no matter whether I win or lose an election, there was always confidence in me, and also support to go on and do whatever we might be able to do next.
How did she make you feel like you weren't defeated?
Well, just by supporting me. She did support me financially after a bit of time when I ran for mayor of Milwaukee, and I lost that, and we spent a lot of our money. But so she did support me, and by getting a job and helping to reestablish our financial position. But she just was patient and understanding the fact that sometimes when you lose, you get sad, and you be in a position of maybe lacking your own self-confidence, or maybe thinking, so it's an interesting kind of thing. When you run for political office, you almost are like a box of soap that's being advertised. And what happens is the ads and the TV and so forth, they talk about what this person is, and it may or may not be true. And you sort of have to separate yourself from what they say about you, against you on TV and so forth, as you would say, well, that's just a box of soap. That's an inanimate object. That is not me. Well, sometimes you get carried away and begin to take in personally those kinds of negative things that are occurring. And so Elaine was always there to help give me that kind of support, to establish clearly that Marty Schreiber was a quality human being, whether he won or lost. And I think that is one of the things that, again, a life's lesson. because we have youngsters who are going to try and sometimes succeed, but sometimes fail. We are going to have friends that are going to do that, and to always have people understand that whether they're successful or not at one particular endeavor does not have any say about the quality of their person or their humaneness.
Mm. What were some of the qualities that you loved the most about Elaine?
The qualities that I loved about Elaine was she wanted to help everyone. And she loved children. She developed an early childhood program for the Milwaukee Public Schools to help youngsters at the early ages of 3 and 4 years of age. She studied very hard and went to get a master's degree at the university, even raising 4 children. So anyway, so she's we're married, and we have a total now of 4 children, but at the time we had 3 children. So she was raising 3 children, going to school, expecting the 4th child, and also at the same time helping me in the campaign. We would go on what we would call the state of Wisconsin, and the states are divided into what they call counties. Well, we have 72 counties in Wisconsin, and part of the goal was to make a 72 county tour. Well, here we are. She would have to take care of and make sure that the youngsters were all, in tip-top, nice pressed shirts and so forth, and meet and greet the people and get into a car before air conditioning and drive 100 miles or so in between stops, and just supportive and enthusiastic and whatever. I mean, there was never any word can't in her life. And, the question, how can we do it? Not, we can't do it.
Yeah. You were married for, I believe, 61 years. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
61 years of marriage. How did your love for her change over time? Did it change or did it get stronger?
It changes. Certainly the reproductive energy is a lot stronger at the age 20 than it is, for example, at the age of 65. And so it's a kind of love that transcends, from this maybe an emotional hot love, for want of a better term right now. So you have that emotionally hot love. And of course, as you grow up with children, you now are developing to being partners and how you raise the children. And as the children grow up and maybe move out of the house, now you have a partner in getting old. And, so each of those segments of the life's journey change in relationship. And I would say that certainly our love has, it depends upon how you define love. If you're talking about true emotion towards someone, that love certainly has increased in depth and understanding over the course of a person's life together.
Yeah. Yeah. Different forms of love, isn't there, Marty?
Correct.
Am I right in saying that? Yeah. I haven't yet experienced, I guess, the kind of love that you're describing. I hope to one day. But what age was Elaine when you started to notice the early stages that she was developing Alzheimer's? Was there any signs of that?
Oh, yes. It goes back to when she was approximately 64 years of age, 62, 63, 64. And what was happening is she was getting lost going to and from places. She was going to and from for the last 10 years. I mean, she would go to and from school where, she developed this early childhood program and so forth. Well, she would get lost and either you pull over to the side and the police would ask, would call and I would come and get her, or she would go for a walk and she would, not be able to get home. She was a great cook, and sometimes she would mess up her recipes so badly that she would cry. Or she would back in and out of our garage and many times scrape the side of the car. And we would be talking with friends and she would tell them what we did, maybe the night or the week before. And it was a hard time correlating what she said with the actuality of the situation. And so those signs then were getting so more pronounced that we in turn did get a medical expert to help us with that diagnosis. And so I do not want us to miss another point about the type of love and changing of love.
Yeah.
So I sort of traced it from the reproductive love and moving forward. But then there's also a different kind of love when my Elaine or when your loved one develops Alzheimer's and becomes a person that you've never met before. And there in turn becomes another kind of love, because what you have to do as this disease takes its toll on your loved one's mind, as this disease takes its toll, you have to know that this person is now changing, and you have to then let go of this person who once was, so you can embrace and love this person who now is. Because as long as I would try to keep Elaine in my world, I would try to love her in my world. Well, that was impossible because she couldn't remember certain things. She would sometimes do awkward kinds of things, and she would miss up on what would happen or not happen, get lost and so forth. And so if I would have tried to keep her in my world, there could have never been a chance to understand and develop this love for someone who now is. And I think for people to understand that there are these stages of love, but how important it is to let go of this person who once was, because this Alzheimer's is something you're never going to beat this disease head on. And we've got to learn to work around it and learn to understand how best we can help our loved one live their best life possible.
How were you able to let go of that person Elaine once was and focus on the person that she is, essentially? How did that work?
Well, I want you to know that I tried a couple of different things. And I say in the book that all of the armies marching and all of the Navy sailing and all of the beer that's brewed and all of the liquor that is distilled is not going to change this disease. And so it was a matter of finally beginning to understand what was happening. And it's not a quick, what you would call a pivot. In other words, there's this person who once was, and I'm going to switch and love this person who now is, because this person who once was is changing just a little bit every day. And this person who is now becoming this person with Alzheimer's is changing a little bit every day. So you are gradually making the transition. And we talked a bit ago about grieving and unacknowledged grieving. But as you find out what does not work, which is fighting head on, which is alcohol, you begin to understand that this is such a tough thing that I would tell any caregiver, you cannot do it alone. I did go to counseling, and my counselor helped me identify a lot of my emotional feelings and also helped me confront what every caregiver goes through. And that is this ambiguous loss, this changing. And so it's been 18 years on this journey. And I've seen Elaine go from this wonderful, wonderful human being into someone whose world was so small, she needed help in every type of activity of living that there is. And so you have to work at it, but you cannot do it alone. And that's really why I wrote the book, because I feel so compelled to help caregivers learn about this disease. And my contention is that if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. And that ignorance of the disease heightens the worry, the anxiety, the frustration, the annoyance, and so forth. Because as long as I didn't understand this disease and tried to keep Elaine in my world and, corrected her think of this. That's, a person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, that you are going to be losing your memory, and you have that diagnosis, you're aware of that, and then someone criticizes you for everything you say. Well, how much more devastating is that? But then the other point that comes across really so important, and how did I make this change? And one of the things that really helped me make this change was understanding, well, first of all, I'm ready to go to print with this book, and lo and behold, I find a series of notes and journals that Elaine had been keeping, her own. What I did not know is how much she depended upon me for whatever might be considered a source of strength or a fundamental security. And I didn't fully understand that. If we caregivers would understand that we're such an important lifeline to our loved one, if we caregivers would understand it, we would take better care of ourselves. Because it's one thing for me to say I love Elaine and I'm going to miss her and so forth, but then to go off on my own tangent in a selfish manner and do my own confronting of this disease all by myself, that's a lot of baloney. That doesn't cut it. Yeah. And as I said, we ask for help. And one of the things we men do, at least that probably not in Australia, but certainly here in the United States, is we don't like to ask for directions for anything. Yeah. And so we don't want to ask for help for anything either. But asking for help is really refusing to give up. And I have to have caregivers understand that. It takes more courage to ask for help than it does to try and do it alone and, in the essence, have your own health suffer and have your loved one's life be even that much more miserable.
Yeah. Did you ever get frustrated, Marty?
Oh, my gosh. I had a mentor who I talked to quite a bit, and his wife had Alzheimer's, and I called him up once and I said, do you ever feel so frustrated that you could just scream? And he says, not only have I felt so frustrated I could scream, I actually have screamed. And it is so hard. And that again underscores why caregivers have to make sure they don't do it alone, that they get help, because these repeat questions over again, unintentional. And see, that's what is so important. I may be straying a little bit, but when Elaine was in the more communicative language situation, we were having lunch at the assisted living facility, and she begins to cry. And I said, Elaine, why are you crying? Well, she said, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. Well, I didn't ask her what's wrong with your turkey husband. I didn't do that. But what that meant to me, what I learned was it was not necessary for her to know my name in order for our hearts to touch. And I have seen so many burdened, saddened, discouraged people because their loved one does not remember their name. My advice to them is, please forget about that, because maybe asking someone to remember their name is like asking someone to win a 100-yard dash at the Olympics with a broken leg. And so there again, that's something that I began to understand. And again, why I wanted to write this book, so that caregivers would understand better how to deal with this disease.
Are there different stages of dementia? Like, how long does it take for it to get totally worse, for her to completely forget you?
Well, yes, there are different stages, but almost every case of Alzheimer's is different. Yeah. In Elane's situation, she survived for 18, 19 years since her diagnosis. The average length of life of a person diagnosed with Alzheimer's may be anywhere from 5 to 7 years, some shorter than that. And so there is no typical case of Alzheimer's. And because of that, while there is no typical case of Alzheimer's, there are typical things that caregivers should be doing.
What are those typical things that caregivers should be doing?
Well, first of all, as I said, join the world of the person who now is. But also, there's a term that I call therapeutic fibbing. And Elaine asked me once how her parents were. And I said, well, Elaine, I said, your parents are both dead. I said, they passed away. And the shock on her face when she realized that maybe she didn't attend the funeral, she didn't say goodbye. And well, I promised I would never put her through that again. Well, then another time she said, how are my parents? Well, I said, Elaine, your parents are just really great. I said, your mom likes working at church. Your dad likes his sports. I said, they're just really happy. Oh, she said, that makes me feel so good. Well, that's therapeutic fibbing. And many people, because they, we are reared from the very beginning not to lie, but I want to assure caregivers that with therapeutic fibbing, I don't know if, I sort of checked it out when Moses went up to the mountain to get the 10 Commandments. He went up twice. Once when God made the engraved in the stone, and then the second time he went and he carved his own. Moses did. And so if you take a look at and you find the actual stone, there's a footnote which says therapeutic fibbing is okay, and it's both of the tablets that were handed down from the mountain. So people have to understand, again, it's a matter of joining the world of the person who now is, and then also a term not a term, redirection. It's 9:00 in the morning, and Elaine says, "I would like a glass of wine." Well, we cannot fight this disease. So the answer is not no, you can't have a glass of wine. The answer is, well, do you want red wine or white wine? Do you want a taller glass or do you want it in a smaller glass? Do you want to drink it with your sisters, or should we invite the neighbors over? So redirection to not confront the argument about, no, you can't have a glass of wine at 9:00 in the morning. But then let's assume for a moment that redirection doesn't work. What is wrong with someone having a glass of wine at 9:00 in the morning if they don't know it's morning, noon, or night anyway? Yeah. And so, again, it all comes under the heading, if Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. What do we need to understand about this disease? We understand that we can't fight it head on, and that our goal then should be to help our loved one live their best life possible.
I love how you talked about Moses. The first time when God wrote the 10 Commandments, he wrote, "Thou shalt not lie." And then when Moses went up a second time, "Thou shalt not lie," in brackets, acceptable fibbing is okay, or therapeutic fibbing, in which case.
Well, I was there. I saw the whole thing.
That was great.
Sometimes I make up stuff.
No, I love it. Honestly, it's incredible. But Marty, I wanted to ask you about did this whole experience with Elaine, did that strengthen your relationship more with God, or did you question it more and more?
It's always easy to profess a strong faith when your faith isn't tested. Things are going hunky-dory, so to speak. And as this disease progressed, and 64 years of age, that's really awfully young as far as I'm concerned. There's so much of a life we had together ahead of us with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And so I did have talks with God on a number of occasions, so to speak, and just curious as to why this should be happening now. But basically, rather than going into the complaint area, just asking for the strength to get through this. And I do believe that Elaine is in a better place. And I also believe that through this disease, we are in a better position to help make a difference in the lives of other people. And, for me, that's really a great blessing. And if Alzheimer's is bad, I've had the best of the worst because of how Elaine did spend her last years of life from the standpoint of in comfort and security and as reduced anxiety as possible, being able to have that experience, to love another person, so to speak. And so, yes, I did question a lot, but now I am just simply grateful for the wonderful life we've had together. And for that, I thank God.
Thank you for sharing that again, Marty. I do appreciate it. Is the person going through dementia, is that person actually in pain? Is that visible at all?
I don't believe that there is a physical pain at all. They just don't know. What I'm reaching to do is turn the voice a little bit louder here. And then, does that better? That look like a halo? Like I'm under a halo?
It did.
I grabbed my desk lamp by mistake. Now, what was the question again?
I was just asking, is there any pain visible at all for the person?
No. It's an emotional pain. In the early years, again, I told you I found her diaries, and I told you, what I learned about her. But in her diaries, as I read them, we had prayed together and we had cried together, but never did I understand the courage that it takes to be diagnosed with this illness and go forward. And so I think there's a very strong, how would we feel as far as emotional, psychological pain is concerned, to be told that we're going to be losing our mind? And also, I don't want to lose part of this thought, but what is important as far as how we deal with this disease, 18 years ago when Elaine was diagnosed, there was not a cure. It could not be delayed. It could not be prevented. So we move forward 18 years, Elaine passes away. Alzheimer's still cannot be cured, delayed, or prevented. So that just makes it incumbent upon us to better understand this disease as to how we might work with it so that we can help not only the person who is ill, but also the caregiver live their best life possible. So within that framework, there's that very strong emotional pain and frustration. But then a person with this disease, and we have seen it happen, they transcend from being this person who once was and a little bit changes up and down and so forth and so forth. They end up being this different person. And generally speaking, I have not experienced or seen any type of physical pain. What happens towards the end of life, towards the end of life, there are different things that the mind shuts down. And for example, the mind can shut down the knowledge on how to swallow. Well, if that happens, the person can't eat. And unfortunately, that the person just, in essence, because they can't eat, they become very, very malnutritionized and creating a whole challenging situation about life support and so on. But no, I can't say that I've seen any pain other than the pain if you don't pay attention and watch closely what's happening to the person. I was always afraid that Elaine would go out at night into the streets and so forth and get lost and maybe hit by a car and so forth. So, yeah. Okay.
I've got a couple more questions for you, Marty, because I do want to be respectful of your time. What do you have a favorite story from Elaine, from you and Elaine?
Well, there are so many of them. The story that I mentioned before is one that I consider to be so very powerful. And that is when I mentioned that when Elaine was crying and said that she loved me more than her husband, and that was just some very, very special one. But you go back and, you think about the birth of the children. And finally at child number 4, I went into the delivery room. And before that period of time, that sort of was not the thing to happen. But that was just, one marvelous experience. Of course, the wedding. And I mean, here's what I would like to think heaven would be like, Jay. I would like to think that heaven would be in a big room, and all there are shelves, and on each shelf is placed a DVD of a point in one's life. And if I want to go and pick out my wedding day, I can go to that DVD and plug it in, and I can see how my wedding day was. Or if I want to see the first time I met Elaine, I can play that DVD back, or with first time with the grandchildren and so forth. But it's I just, life has been so full and so great. So she would help me I wanted to get into sailing as a young teenager, and we didn't have any money. We were dating, so she made a sail out of parachutes. And so I wanted to run for public office. She did everything she could from the standpoint of getting postcards together to tell people where they should vote at what location. When it was time for the children, she would make their dresses because we couldn't afford it. When it was time to move, we ended up also living on a farm for a period of time, and she took care of the lambs birthing. And there was just really nothing that she couldn't do, but each of those moments are just in and of themselves really special. Yeah.
Sorry, Marty. When you got the call that Elaine had passed, firstly, how did you feel, and how are you feeling now?
First of all, I knew Elaine was going to pass at a point in time, but I had just left her the night before on a Sunday night, and we did Zooming with the family, and I fully expected to go with her again in the morning to feed her. And I then did get the call, and it was like almost a terrible blow. And another thing I want to encourage we caregivers to do, and that is we've got to let our emotions out. And I was, even though I knew what was going to be happening at a point in time, it was a shock, just the realization of the finality of it all, I think, maybe. And so that went on for maybe a bit of time. And then that was in my mind, there are things to do. And so within an hour, I was with the Elaine, with her body, and we made arrangements that the University of Wisconsin in Madison would take her and do an autopsy of her brain, because she had been with 18 years of since diagnosis, which was very, very unique. So it was indeed a blow. But how do I feel now? I feel acceptance of what's going on. I feel gratitude for our lives together. I feel grateful that you and I can talk about this whole matter of how we can help caregivers and the person who is ill live their best life possible. So, and I guess maybe we all know, we all have our ups and downs, we can, anyone, you and I separately, we can sit in our chair and we can think how terrible things are, or we can go back into our minds and pull back, as I said, these DVDs that are on the shelf, and pull out those wonderful moments and saying, God, thank you for those opportunities. So Ken, I want to show you a picture of the book, if I can.
Please. I love that.
Okay. And so this is the picture of my two Elaines. I've got to learn how to operate that. And so that's the front cover of the book. But then also this is a book, this book here really sort of tells the story. And that's where Elaine is certainly, I got to get my nose out of there, is certainly dependent, upon whatever might happen in the future. And so we caregivers have to understand that just because our loved one is diagnosed, that doesn't mean that life is over. It may mean that a new type of life is beginning. It's painful. It's very, very difficult. And we have to acknowledge that. But I think if we do that, I think we can help make the journey easier.
Before I ask you the final question, Marty, where do you want people to go to get help if they are a caregiver? What support avenues and resources can you provide? And where do you want people to go and get a copy of your book?
Well, first, I don't know what's going on in Australia as far as what kind of support that there would be. The Alzheimer's Association here in the States, they have an 800 number. Maybe they even, have an association similar to that, but an 800 number 24/7. And so also I would encourage people to be very dementia friendly. I call this disease not a chicken casserole disease. If I, for example, go in for heart surgery and I come home and I can't do anything, people will bring me chicken casserole. If hypothetically I have a hip operation, people bring me chicken casserole. But with Alzheimer's, because people don't know this disease, I don't get any chicken casserole, and even friends then begin to shy away because they don't know how to handle this disease. So then the caregiver is beginning to feel more isolated and maybe even deserted by their friends. So with that being said, caregivers have to understand they must reach out for help. And to think that we can do it alone is foolish, and we're just hurting our own. Many caregivers have a good chance of dying before their loved ones because all of the emotional impact, not taking care of themselves. So I do hope that there are different types of support mechanisms that people can easily get through inquiring in communities and so forth. And I don't know any bookstores in Australia, but I do know that Amazon does carry the book, and also we have a website, my2elaines.com, all one word, my2elaines. And if anyone does have a problem getting the book, it would be my honor to send a book to Australia.
Oh, you're too kind, Marty. Honestly, I will definitely make sure that people know where to go for my American audience. Marty just mentioned Alzheimer's, I believe, .com, or the number as well. So I'll make sure everyone knows. All the links will be in the show notes below. And for those people that are here in Australia or abroad, I'll look at some other resources for them too, just to make it easier for them. And I'll make sure people know where to go to get a copy of your book. Definitely. I can't wait for my copy to arrive, Marty, so I can read it and promote it like crazy. Things take forever these days to arrive in Australia, Marty, thanks to distribution issues, but that's neither here or there. It makes me even more excited for it to arrive. But Marty, I am so grateful for your time today. This is my final question. I ask all my guests at the very end. It is a hypothetical one, but it kind of, you mentioned before, you can imagine what heaven must be like with those DVDs playing. Well, I want to ask you this one. Imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends, your family, your grandkids, everyone has decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done while here on Earth. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all. We'll call it magic for the sake of argument, but they've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
I think I would like it to say that we were able to help people live a better life, and by better understanding the challenges of life, by better understanding how we should be looking at things. I think that is what I would like. I think I'd like them to say that I was 6 feet tall and I weighed 180 pounds. Never happened because I'm 5'7" and 215 pounds. So what I would, so no, I don't think they're going to say that I was tall and good looking. But I think that if they say that he was he wanted to help people as best he could. And that would be what I would want them to say. And, I know what else they would say. And my Two Elaines sold 2 million books. That's what I would like to say.
I'm sure it will. I have no doubt, my friend. I have no doubt at all. And by the way, I'm 5'7" too, so we can relate on that. And maybe one of these days I may get to 200 pounds or over. I don't even know what I am now. I think I'm 130 something, 140.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'm
well, how old are you?
I'm 26 in August. So currently 25, but I'll be 26 not too long to go. But
well, you're old enough to be my grandson. So but happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much, Marty. When's your birthday?
April 8th.
So it just passed. Okay. Well, I'll remember that for next time, and I'll send you a birthday message. But,
thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marty, for your time today and for sharing. I really am grateful. I consider this an honor and a blessing to get to know you a little bit more and to share your story and Elaine's story as well. So thank you so much for joining me on the Storybox podcast.
My honor, my privilege. Thank you.